hit the subscribe button. Currently only 1.7% of my viewers are subscribed. Once we hit 1,000 subscribers, I'll release an exclusive special video just for you. The dense, alien jungle pressed in on all sides as John Blackwood's spaceship, the Voyager, plummeted through the atmosphere of an unknown planet. Sparks flew and alarms screamed as the craft skidded to a halt amid towering, twisted trees. John's breath came in ragged gasps as he unbuckled his harness, his mind racing. The ship's damage was extensive, and he needed to assess the situation quickly. Stepping out into the unfamiliar terrain, John was immediately struck by the oppressive heat and the strange, pungent scents that filled the air. His training as an ex-soldier had prepared him for survival in harsh environments, but this planet felt different, more menacing. He quickly gathered essential supplies from the wreckage, slinging a pack over his shoulder and arming himself with a plasma pistol. Moving cautiously through the underbrush, John's senses were on high alert. The forest was alive with unfamiliar sounds, and every rustle of leaves set his nerves on edge. Suddenly, a guttural growl echoed nearby. John froze, his heart thudding. A massive, reptilian creature burst through the foliage, its eyes fixed on him with predatory intent. He fired his pistol, the beam scorching the creature's hide but not stopping its advance. In a split-second decision, John dived to the side, narrowly avoiding a swipe from the beast's claws. John scrambled to his feet and ran, his pulse pounding in his ears. He didn't stop until he found a small clearing, breathing heavily as he scanned his surroundings. It was then that he noticed a faint, almost imperceptible trail of blood leading deeper into the forest. Curiosity and caution warred within him, but his sense of duty won out. He followed the trail, each step bringing him closer to the unknown. The trail led to a small, shaded grove where John discovered an injured alien girl lying amidst the roots of an enormous tree. Her skin was a light blue, dotted with bioluminescent spots that flickered weakly. She was unconscious, her breathing shallow. John hesitated, his hand tightening around his pistol. This alien, though young and frail, was of a race known for their ruthlessness. But leaving her here to die wasn't an option he could live with. Kneeling beside her, John checked her wounds. She had deep gashes along her side, and her leg appeared broken. He began to treat her injuries with what little medical supplies he had, working quickly but gently. As he wrapped her wounds, she stirred, her eyes fluttering open. They locked onto John's, wide with fear and pain. "Easy now," John said softly, unsure if she understood him. "I'm here to help." The girl didn't respond, but her gaze softened slightly. John knew he needed to find a safer place for both of them. He carefully lifted her, noting how light she was, and began the arduous journey back to his makeshift camp. The trek was slow, the alien girl occasionally whimpering in pain, but John pressed on, determined to get her to safety. Back at the cave he had secured earlier, John set the girl down gently on a bed of leaves and began to build a fire. The warmth would help her recover, and the light would keep the more timid predators at bay. As the flames flickered to life, John sat beside the girl, watching her breathe. He needed to figure out a way to communicate with her, to understand who she was and why she had been left here. Hours passed, and John's mind raced with possibilities. The alien girl had drifted into a restless sleep, her face etched with pain. John's own exhaustion was setting in, but he forced himself to stay vigilant. He scanned the perimeter of their camp, alert for any signs of danger. The forest seemed quieter now, as if the creatures knew to keep their distance from the firelight. John's thoughts turned to the damaged communication device in his ship. If he could repair it, there might be a chance to call for rescue. But that meant returning to the crash site, a perilous task given the hostile environment. He glanced at the girl, her breathing more even now. Leaving her alone was risky, but it might be their only shot at survival. As dawn broke, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, John made his decision. He would go back to the ship, retrieve the parts needed to fix the communication device, and return before nightfall. With renewed determination, he prepared for the journey, steeling himself for the challenges ahead. The alien girl stirred again, her eyes opening to meet his. She seemed more alert, her expression a mixture of curiosity and gratitude. John smiled, a rare gesture for him, and nodded reassuringly. "I'll be back," he promised. "Stay safe." John moved swiftly through the dense undergrowth, the alien foliage scraping against his suit. His thoughts raced as he retraced his steps to the crash site, every sense on high alert. The planet's strange sounds and oppressive atmosphere weighed heavily on him, but his mission was clear: retrieve the necessary components to repair the communication device and call for help. The trek was arduous, the unfamiliar terrain offering little respite. John's mind drifted to Sarah, the alien girl he had left behind. Her luminescent eyes had held a mixture of pain and hope, and he knew he had to get back to her as quickly as possible. Her survival depended on it, and perhaps his did too. As he approached the crash site, John slowed his pace, moving cautiously through the last stretch of jungle. He scanned the area, noting the wreckage of the Voyager strewn across the clearing. The site was both a reminder of his predicament and a source of potential salvation. John crept closer, keeping an eye out for any signs of danger. A sudden movement caught his attention. John froze, his pulse quickening. Emerging from behind a piece of wreckage were two figures, their silhouettes distinctly alien. They were unlike any creatures John had seen before, tall and slender with elongated limbs and dark, mottled skin. He watched as they rifled through the debris, seemingly searching for something specific. John's mind raced. These aliens could be allies or enemies, but the fact that they were searching his ship suggested they were looking for something important, perhaps the very device he needed. He couldn't afford to reveal himself without a plan. Silently, John circled around the clearing, using the thick vegetation for cover. He needed a closer look to understand their intentions. As he crept nearer, he overheard their guttural conversation. Though the language was foreign, their urgency was clear. John's suspicion grew. They were after the communication device. His training kicked in. John formulated a plan to distract the aliens and retrieve the device. He picked up a small rock and hurled it into the jungle on the opposite side of the clearing. The noise startled the aliens, drawing their attention away from the wreckage. John seized the moment, darting from his hiding place and slipping behind a large fragment of his ship. He could see the device now, partially buried under debris. John moved quickly but quietly, retrieving the device and securing it in his pack. The aliens, realizing the noise was a false alarm, turned back towards the wreckage. John knew he had only seconds before they discovered his presence. With the device safely in his possession, John retreated the way he had come, moving swiftly and silently through the jungle. His heart pounded, the adrenaline driving him forward. He couldn't risk leading the aliens back to Sarah, so he took a circuitous route back to the cave. As he neared the cave, John heard a low growl. His pulse quickened again as he realized the source was not far from their shelter. He approached cautiously, readying his plasma pistol. Bursting through the foliage, John found Sarah backed against the cave wall, a large, predatory creature advancing on her. Its eyes gleamed with hunger, its muscles tensed to strike. John didn't hesitate. He fired at the creature, the plasma bolt hitting its flank. The beast roared in pain and fury, turning its attention towards him. John fired again, driving the creature back into the jungle. He rushed to Sarah's side, checking her for injuries. She was shaken but unharmed. Sarah looked at John with wide eyes, her gratitude clear. "Thank you," she managed to say in broken English, her voice trembling. John gave her a reassuring smile, though his mind was already turning to their next challenge. "We need to move. It's not safe here anymore." Sarah nodded, understanding the urgency. John helped her to her feet, and they began their trek away from the cave, seeking a new refuge. The communication device in John's pack was their only hope now, and he needed to find a safe place to set it up and send the distress signal. As they moved through the jungle, John couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The planet's dangers were ever present, and now, with hostile aliens potentially on their trail, the stakes were higher than ever. John's resolve hardened. He would protect Sarah and ensure their survival no matter what. The journey was grueling, but they pressed on, guided by the faint hope of rescue. John's determination and Sarah's resilience would see them through the trials ahead, forging an unspoken bond between them. John and Sarah pushed forward, moving through the alien jungle with determination. The canopy above filtered the sunlight into dappled patterns on the forest floor, creating an eerie yet mesmerizing atmosphere. The weight of their situation pressed heavily on John's mind, but he kept his focus sharp. The communication device in his pack was their lifeline, and they needed to find a secure location to send a distress signal. Sarah walked beside him, her luminescent eyes scanning their surroundings. She had grown more confident on her feet, though John could see the strain of their ordeal etched on her face. They communicated in halting English, her understanding improving with each exchange. She pointed to a nearby hill, suggesting it as a potential vantage point. John nodded, appreciating her input and silently acknowledging her resilience. The climb up the hill was steep, the terrain unforgiving. As they ascended, John couldn't help but admire Sarah's tenacity. Despite her injuries and the alien nature of her environment, she moved with a grace and determination that inspired him. Reaching the summit, they were greeted by a panoramic view of the jungle, with a river snaking through the landscape below. "This should work," John said, setting down his pack and retrieving the communication device. He began to assemble it, his hands moving with practiced precision. Sarah watched closely, her curiosity evident. John explained each step, not only to teach her but also to keep his own mind focused and calm. As he worked, John's thoughts wandered to the hostile aliens they had encountered. Their presence on the planet raised troubling questions. What did they want with Sarah? What was the significance of the energy source she had mentioned? John knew these questions needed answers, but their immediate priority was to send the distress signal and secure their safety. The device whirred to life, its small screen glowing softly. John keyed in a distress call, transmitting their coordinates and a brief message detailing their situation. He hoped the signal would reach friendly forces, but there was no guarantee. The uncertainty gnawed at him, but he pushed it aside, focusing on the task at hand. Suddenly, a sound broke the relative silence of the hilltop, a low, rumbling growl. John and Sarah spun around to see a large, predatory creature emerging from the underbrush. Its scales glinted in the filtered sunlight, and its eyes locked onto them with predatory intent. John's pulse quickened. They had nowhere to run. "Sarah, stay behind me," John instructed, drawing his plasma pistol. He aimed at the creature, ready to defend their position. The beast lunged, its powerful legs propelling it forward with alarming speed. John fired, the plasma bolt striking the creature's side. It howled in pain but continued its charge. Sarah, eyes wide with fear, grabbed a nearby branch and swung it with surprising strength, striking the creature across the snout. The beast recoiled, momentarily stunned. John took the opportunity to fire again, this time aiming for its head. The shot connected, and the creature collapsed, its body twitching before going still. Breathing heavily, John turned to Sarah. "Are you all right?" She nodded, though her hands trembled. "Yes, but we need to move. More might come." John agreed, quickly packing up the communication device. They descended the hill, moving quickly yet cautiously. The encounter had shaken them both, but it also solidified their partnership. John realized that Sarah was not just a helpless survivor. She was a valuable ally with a strength he hadn't fully appreciated before. As they made their way through the jungle, John's mind kept returning to the signal they had sent. Would it be received in time? Would help arrive before the hostile aliens found them again? These thoughts weighed on him, but he kept moving, driven by a growing sense of responsibility for Sarah. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the landscape. John and Sarah found a new shelter, a small cave hidden behind a waterfall. It offered both concealment and a reliable source of fresh water. John set up a basic camp, lighting a small fire to keep them warm and cook the meager rations he had left. Sarah sat beside the fire, her eyes reflecting the dancing flames. "Thank you, John," she said softly, "for everything." John met her gaze, seeing the gratitude and trust in her eyes. "We'll get through this," he replied with conviction. "We just have to keep moving forward." They settled in for the night, the sounds of the jungle creating a strange symphony around them. John remained vigilant, his thoughts racing with plans and contingencies. They had survived another day, but the challenges ahead were daunting. Yet, with Sarah by his side, he felt a renewed sense of purpose and hope. As dawn broke, John and Sarah prepared to move again. The small cave behind the waterfall had served as a decent shelter, but they knew it wasn't safe to stay in one place for too long. The alien landscape stretched out before them, a constant reminder of their precarious situation. John's thoughts lingered on the distress signal they had sent. Had it reached anyone? Would help arrive in time? They gathered their belongings, John ensuring the communication device was securely packed. Sarah, with her improving English, pointed out a path that seemed less traveled. They set off, navigating the dense foliage with a growing sense of urgency. Every rustle in the underbrush, every distant call of a creature kept them on edge. As they walked, John couldn't help but notice Sarah's resilience. Despite her injuries and the stress of their situation, she moved with a determination that inspired him. They communicated in short, efficient exchanges, saving their energy for the arduous trek ahead. Midday came and they reached a small clearing. John suggested they rest for a moment. Sarah nodded, sitting on a fallen log. John took the opportunity to scan their surroundings, his military training making him vigilant. The planet's unique flora and fauna were unlike anything he had seen before, yet there was an underlying threat that kept him constantly alert. Suddenly, the sound of engines broke the stillness of the jungle. John's heart raced as he motioned for Sarah to take cover. They crouched behind a thick cluster of bushes, peering through the leaves. A sleek, alien craft descended, landing gracefully in the clearing. John's pulse quickened. These were the hostile aliens they had encountered before. Two figures emerged from the craft, their tall, slender forms moving with a predatory grace. John recognized them immediately. These aliens were searching for something or someone. His grip tightened on his plasma pistol, ready to defend Sarah at all costs. The aliens began to scan the area, their devices emitting strange, pulsating lights. John knew they had to move quickly before they were discovered. He whispered to Sarah, explaining their need to sneak around the clearing and continue towards higher ground. She nodded, understanding the gravity of their situation. They moved with caution, every step measured and silent. The dense jungle provided ample cover, but John could feel the tension in the air. As they circled the clearing, John caught snippets of the aliens' conversation. Though he couldn't understand their language, the urgency in their tones was unmistakable. They were closing in on something important. John and Sarah managed to slip past the clearing undetected, but the encounter left John uneasy. The presence of the alien craft indicated that their enemies were more resourceful and determined than he had anticipated. They needed to find a secure location to send another distress signal, and fast. As they climbed a rocky outcrop, John's thoughts were interrupted by a sudden commotion behind them. The aliens had discovered their trail. John cursed under his breath, urging Sarah to move faster. They reached the top of the outcrop, where a narrow ledge overlooked a steep drop. There was no turning back. John and Sarah pressed on, their breaths labored. The sounds of pursuit grew closer, and John knew they had to make a stand. They found a defensible position on the ledge, where the rocky terrain provided some cover. John positioned himself at the front, his plasma pistol ready. The aliens emerged from the jungle, their eyes locking onto John and Sarah. Without hesitation, John opened fire, the plasma bolts lighting up the dimming sky. The aliens returned fire, their weapons emitting sharp, hissing sounds. John focused on his aim, each shot calculated to drive the aliens back. Sarah, though weaponless, scanned the area for any advantage. She spotted a large boulder perched precariously on the edge of the cliff. With a burst of energy, she pushed against it, her efforts causing it to tumble down towards the aliens. The boulder crashed into their midst, creating a momentary chaos. Seizing the opportunity, John advanced, his shots more precise. The aliens, caught off guard, began to retreat. John and Sarah used the moment to their advantage, moving quickly away from the ledge and deeper into the rugged terrain. The pursuit was relentless, but John's tactical mind found a path through the rocks that eventually led them to a secluded cave. Inside, they paused to catch their breath. John checked their supplies, knowing they had bought themselves only a little time. Sarah looked at him, her eyes filled with both exhaustion and determination. "We can't keep running," she said, her voice steady despite the situation. John nodded, his mind racing with strategies. "We need to make a stand and finish this." Their immediate goal was clear: secure their position and prepare for the inevitable confrontation. They worked quickly, fortifying the cave entrance and setting traps with what little resources they had. The final battle was approaching, and John knew they had to be ready. As the sun set, casting a warm glow over the rugged landscape, John and Sarah stood side by side. Their bond had been forged through trials, and now they faced their greatest challenge. The coming night would decide their fate.